welcome to this episode of Chain Conversations. My name is Laura McQueen and I'm the MD here at Leaders. This season is part of a programme called the Leaders Meet Diversity series, which we've been running in partnership with Facebook for a couple of years now. Chain Conversation brings together leaders from a variety of backgrounds across professional sport to share their personal stories, to reflect on their own career journeys, pinpointing some peaks and troughs, some helps and hindrances along the way to share with you. The premise is simple, really. Person A picks person B to interview, person B picks person C to interview, and so on and so on. So over the course of the coming months, you'll really get exposed to quite a lot of independent personal journeys throughout the sports industry. The aim is to inspire you, to energise you, and to showcase why diverse thinking and diverse opportunity makes for a better business across sport and beyond. I really hope you enjoy it and speak to you soon.
Hello, Heather. Thank you for
Jerome.
joining me today for the next edition in Leaders Chains Conversations. Let's kick off the line of questioning. I'll start with a really easy one for you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your current role, and what you've been up to.
Okay. Wow. So, what should I say about myself? I'm a mixed race woman of a certain age and stage in life. My mother was Jamaican and my father English, and I was born in Jamaica. So I always view Jamaica as really my home. And I've spent my career doing a whole mix of different things. I left school early, wasn't very good at school, told I wouldn't amount to very much, and sort of said that ain't going to happen. My mum both my parents actually were always amazing to me. But I suppose that my first sort of point I want to make is for all of us who've been told and maybe not done well at school, I was brought up with a belief that if you worked hard enough, then you could achieve. And I think that philosophy stays with me and has stayed with me all of my working life. So sort of weirdly against all the odds, I became a barrister, spent some time in the law. Then when I had my son, I went into local government, became the youngest chief exec in the country. I did a whole around 3 authorities, left that, and when I was 40, which was only the other day, of course, and then basically spent time in a range of sectors, mainly media and sport. I was the first woman non-exec on the board of the FA, first person of colour on the board of the FA, ran a football club. And then I'd always wanted to go into the creative sector. I worked at Channel 4, and then I set up my own production company, and I'm just making a documentary feature film, and we're developing some other films, myself and my partner. My husband sadly died 2 years ago, and I took over responsibility for his sports communications company, Vero Communications, and then we set up a women's sports group to reflect the increasing momentum in women's sports. So that's me, and that's what I'm currently doing.
There's a lot there.
I was trying to get it all in quite a short space of time, so
there's a lot there.
too long.
That's brilliant. I mean, the first thing I'm definitely gonna give you a rubber stamp for is my wife is part Jamaican, so I'm with you there.
Right.
But yeah, let's unpackage this a little bit. So, I mean, you've highlighted a lot of really, really kind of inspiring things that you've kind of taken on and have continued to establish in your career. Can you just tell us a little bit about your career path and how you found just generally working your way through the industry, especially as a barrister?
Yeah. I would love to say I had a plan, but I never had a plan. And as I said, because I came really from a background where, in a way, nothing was expected, it was very much down to me. I think I became a barrister because I wanted to be involved in issues around justice. and social justice, and represented people who otherwise might not be represented. But it was very hard to earn a living, because you get paid at different times, and so when I had my son, I had to be in a more stable earning environment, and thought, well, actually, if you could go and shape public policy, intervene before people hit a crisis, then that was very interesting to me. And I had 17 years working in the public sector, looking at how do you begin to improve the education system, and my final job was in Lambeth, where Brixton, as we all in this country, is the black soul, I always think, of this country. So a really challenging job, but crucially important. So I did that, and then I really wanted to do something different. I'd always had this hankering to be on the more creative side. Not that I'm creative myself, but I think I'm good at working with people who are creative. And I managed to find my way through. I took a sort of drop in terms of status to try and get myself into a different industry, which is what I did. And that's one of the points I also make with people, that if you want a change in career, and it is doable, increasingly much more possible now than it used to be, then you just have to think about where you want to compromise. How are you going to learn so that you can get yourself into a position where you can find an entry point into a different sector? And really, I suppose between media and sport, that's where I've now been for the last 20 years. But I still am only 40 years old. Groundhog Day. Feels like Groundhog Day with the pandemic, doesn't it? We all spend our days on calls, and we don't know whether it's a Tuesday or a Friday really anymore.
Yeah, everything just rolls into one, right?
It does. It all blurs.
I guess my follow-up question there would be some of the challenges that you would have had to face. Like, how did you overcome them, and was there anything in particular that you would point out in terms of advice to deal with it?
So I spend quite a lot of my time, talking to other people within companies and sectors. So particularly I've done work in diversity around women's leadership, black leadership in particular, and about how one deals with what we still know are the inbuilt systems of discrimination. And I've just been looking, for example, at sport, and in sport, and I think there's been a report that says there are only 3 black women across all of the governing bodies of all of the sports. I don't think it's much better for black men, but as well. And I just think, that's an appalling indictment of our sports sector. That actually, I know probably more about football, but I work in football and cricket and across many, many sports, rugby, and you can see this amazing diversity on the whole on the field of play, and you just don't see it reflected in the rooms where people are making decisions. And so, so a lot of my work is about how we try and force some of that change through, how those governing bodies need to be proactive now in addressing this. I think in a post-Black Lives Matter series of events that have happened in these last few months, it is back on the table. It should never be off the table. And then so one is about what are the structures, what are the changes that have to be put in place. And then for those of us who are participating in, whether it's this sector or across all sectors, how do we find ways of enhancing our careers, and also, surviving some of the challenges of often being the only one in the room. I am often the only person of colour in a room. And how do you deal with that?
And just on that, like how have you found that? I mean, obviously you've navigated several different roles and positions, and you never
get used to it. I long for the day that when I walk into a room and I see other black colleagues, I just go, isn't it? So it's great to meet you today, for example. But you made my day, because the absence, is always with you. I think what you learn, and what I say particularly to a younger generation who sadly are still having to face these issues, I had hoped we would have made more progress. We have made some, but by no means enough, is, always hold on to your moral compass. Always stand the ground. Just stand the ground quietly. Don't get angry. Tough, I know. Don't get angry. Don't, just stand your ground. It's about respect. It's not about being Mr. or Miss Popular. And about understanding how you, this is a bigger conversation, a much bigger conversation, and I spend a lot of time in it, but understand really, if you're going to make change, you can't do it by yourself. So you have to build allies, and that will mean you can't fight every fight. You just can't fight every fight. So know the fights you want to have. What are the priorities for you in any organisation? So if the FA work really hard around the whole black coaches, trying to shift some of those lines around what we see on the field of play and what we see in the dugout. Some success, way not enough, but there are now people who are really pushing that agenda really hard. So I think those would be some of my observations. Have good mates. Remember that your friends and your family are always the most important. And, sometimes you just got to close the door to some of those difficult situations that you've been in the course of the day, and just, live and remember who you are.
Awesome. So I guess my next question would be, again, looking at your career path and how you've arrived at where you are today, what are the key things that you would say, or is there a key moment anyway that has kind of propelled you to kind of find yourself? And do you feel as though you are now at that destination where you can change?
I feel much more, capable of being myself now. That's partly because, I lost my husband a few years ago, so there's a sort of sense of what am I worried about? What's important. I also think that I've probably had enough time in terms of the work that I've done to feel I've got some respect and around what I do and what I say, and therefore my voice matters when I talk about these issues of diversity, whether in my other walks of life or in media, and as we are doing today.
Thank you. And are there any leaders that inspire you, or people that you have on board, like we mentioned, allies and things like that? Is there anyone that you would kind of draw strength from, or any learnings?
Well, this is always a tough question, because there are, there's so many amazing people who are out there whose courage and what they stood for and their fight has been inspiring. I suppose for me, the one enduring, and it's because I had the privilege and honour of meeting him when he came to Brixton, was Nelson Mandela. He was just the most extraordinary person. That
you can imagine.
He was just, I've never seen a reaction of the crowd like it. It was like the second coming. People just wanted to touch him, and I just always remember this moment, surrounded by pomp and circumstance. He was his Prince Charles was there, and the first person he spoke to was the black security guard at the bottom of the steps, and it was just, it said it all.
Yeah.
And that person was as important as all the other, in quotes, great and good people. And so it was this unbelievable strength and humility that I always remember and always found inspiring.
Awesome. So my final question.
Final now, you go.
I know. I keep going on. So what kind of advice would you give to, let's say, the next generation kind of navigating through the current climate and all the changes and the things that we're seeing now?
Yeah, one is you have to just keep learning. and the environments and the level of ambiguity and uncertainty have just increased by a gazillion times. So whatever you knew yesterday, great, but learn about today and learn about tomorrow. So learn from others, learn from reading, but don't stop learning. And that's, for me, absolutely key. I think the other is what I said earlier, which is just making sure that you can hold on to your sense of self and being resilient, because, you know, life is hard. We all get knockbacks. We all get rejections. You know, I get rejections loads of times. People say, oh, you know, am I frightened sometimes when I'm, you know, standing up in front of a room of people I don't know and feeling, yeah, of course I get anxious. But it's about overcoming that fear. It's about knowing that you've got something to give, and just, as I say, really holding yourself firmly to the ground.
Yeah. Oh, awesome.
Okay.
I mean, that's super encouraging just to hear your story.
Thank you very much.
I'm hoping that other people will also feel inspired by
I don't know.
You know, what you've been through and how you've arrived at where you are today. It definitely encourages me and gives me more hope. I'm going to keep fighting the good fight as well.
Good. Well, listen, it's great to meet you, Jerome, and thank you so much for your time today. And good luck with the rest of your career as well.
Thank you very much, Heather. Thank you for your time. Take care.
Bye-bye. Bye.